Hello, you're welcome to chapter 13. In this chapter, I'm going to give you a conceptual overview of annuities and, of course, how to solve annuity problems by looking at the table, using the table factors or the table lookup. And if you remember, what we did in our previous chapter was to look at the present value and to look at the future value, but our focus was more on determining the present value of a single amount and the future value of a single amount. In this chapter, what we're going to try to do is to look at a series of payments. That's what we call the annuities. And the term of the annuity will be from the beginning of the first payment to the end of the last payment. That becomes the term of that annuity. And uh, the reasoning will be the same as what we did in our previous chapter, is we try to determine the future value or the present value of this series of payments. And there are different types of annuities. And our focus in the chapter is going to be on the second part of annuities. But just keep in mind that annuity can be contingent, it can be annuity certain. If you know specifically the term and how much the payment will be, then in that case we talk about a certain, and it becomes an annuity certain. A good example of this will be the mortgage payments, or it could be the contingent annuity, where in this case it depends on a particular event occurring. And because we don't know when the event will occur, then it becomes uncertain event. So it becomes a contingent annuity. And a good example of this will be the life insurance payments. The focus of the chapter is on the second part of annuities, and that is an ordinary annuity and annuity due. And the difference between an ordinary annuity and annuity due is, of course, the timing of the payments. In an ordinary annuity, the payments comes in at the end of the period. With annuity due, the payments happen at the beginning of the period. That's the only difference between the two. So that it's just the timing of those payments. Is it happening at the end of the period or at the beginning of the period? In terms of the computation, or in determining the present value or the future value of the annuities, whether it's annuity due or is an order annuity, the most important thing is what we saw in the previous chapter, and that is we need to know the number of periods and we need to know the rate of the period. Then we can apply the same reasoning as just as the previous chapter in trying to walk across and find what the table factor will be. And then once we determine the table factor, which in this case is going to be what we call the future value interest factor of annuity. So this is what the table is going to give you. And then you just multiply this with the annuity payments, and this will give you your future value of that annuity. Again, the key idea is we need to know the number of periods and we need to know the rate per period. Now, this process is very simple. Assuming, for example, you've been told the return on this investment is 10%, and this is per year for 2 years. So again, remember, if this was an annual compounding, then there's nothing else you need to know. You just know that, hey, your interest is 10% or the rate is 10%, and you know the number of periods are 2 periods. However, if this was a case where the compounded again was on a semi-annual basis, then in that case, then we know that we have 2 periods per year. So in terms of the total periods, then you'll have the 2 times 2 years, and then you'll have 4. And in terms of the rate, your I is no longer 10%. Your rate per period will be 10% divided by the number of periods per year. If you, this again, this is the case of a semi-annual, then you have 2 periods per year, and then you'll end up having 5% as your rate per period. So that will change in terms of looking for the table factor. You have to identify the four periods and identify your rate being 5%. Again, just walk through it, and that will give you the value. For example, this is how uh, the table will look like. That's for the an order annuity table. So if you're looking at 10%, and this was a case of 2 years, then you just know that the value you're looking for, the table factor, will be 2.1. However, if this was a semi-annual basis within the same 2 years, then it changes our computation for I, because then I is no longer 10%, your rate now is 5%, and your number of periods is no longer 2 years, you have a total number of periods of 4 years, and then in that case, then your your future value interest factor for the order annuity is going to be 4.3101 and not 2.1. Now you can see that changes. So that's why I was saying the key idea is to make sure that you're using the correct number of periods and you're using the correct rate per period. So you need to identify that one first before we can walk through it. Then once you find the table factor, just multiply this with the payment, that's the annuity payments, and that will give you the present value of uh, that particular annuity or order annuity. In the case of the present value by use of tables, again, is similar to the future value. The only difference is you'll end up having a different table. So now you have to have a present value table of annuity. And you'll do the same thing. The key idea is to determine, of course, your number of periods and identify your rate per period, and then once you've identified this, you'll just go to the table and you'll do the same thing, assuming again this is being compounded on a yearly basis and you have 10% for 2 years. Again, you just identify the 10% and the number of periods being 2, and you walk through it and you have a present value interest factor of 1.7355, and you multiply this with the annuity payments, and that will give you the present value of the ordinary annuity. Again, the applications is just as what we saw in our previous chapter, nothing really complex. So the key idea in solving most of the annuity problems will be, again, if you're using the tables, is be to make sure you're using the correct number of periods, and to make sure again you're using the correct number of rate per period is correct, and the number of period is correct, and also to make sure you are basically in the correct table, because remember we have the present value of an order annuity. You also have the future value of an order annuity, in addition to what we learned in our previous chapter, where we're looking at the present value of a single amount and the future value of a single amount. So these three is very important to us. It's the number of periods, your rate per period, and of course the making sure that you are using or you are reflecting over the correct table. So I hope this information helps. But in my second video, what I'm going to try to do is to walk through a number of problems and then be able to extend my conversation on the present value and the future value of an annuity due. That's where the payments are coming or being received at the beginning of the period and not at the end of the period, as you have seen this. So I will show you that in my second video. So check it out, and I hope again, if you have any questions, feel free to let me know, and see you soon. Thank you.